I always say that I never sang any style of music that I hadn't heard in my household growing up. I can't approach it with any kind of authenticity.
She was the voice that could silence a stadium, the queen of genre-bending brilliance. But behind the spotlight, Linda Ronstadt harbored a list of betrayals that cut deeper than any lyric she ever sang. In this video, we look into the 7 musicians who crossed paths with Ronstadt in ways that left lasting scars. From backstage betrayals to public humiliations, these stories reveal the untold tensions in the world of rock and roll. Don Henley, the Eagles. Number 7. Don Henley and the Eagles. Before the Eagles filled stadiums, they were just a pair of unknown musicians, Don Henley and Glenn Frey, trying to find their place in Los Angeles. Linda Ronstadt changed everything for them. In 1971, she needed a backing band for her upcoming tour and decided to give these two a chance. Henley played drums and sang harmonies. Frey played guitar. The lineup also included Randy Meisner and Bernie Leadon. That tour became the foundation for one of the biggest rock bands in history, the Eagles. Ronstadt didn't just give them a job, she gave them exposure, direction, and credibility. At that time, she was a rising star with a strong reputation in country rock. Industry insiders paid attention to her band. She helped them build contacts, and by the end of the tour, Frey and Henley had decided to branch out and form their own group. Ronstadt even supported that decision. She didn't try to keep them. She let them go and even suggested record executives check them out. The Eagles exploded quickly. By 1973, they had a hit with Take It Easy. Soon came Desperado, One of These Nights, and Hotel California. While Ronstadt continued her successful solo career, the guys she helped launch became stadium giants. But things soured behind the scenes. Henley's attitude shifted. Fame changed the tone. He reportedly became more controlling and dismissive of Ronstadt's approach to music. In an interview during the mid-70s, Henley made a subtle but pointed remark that Ronstadt's style was safe and too polished. For Ronstadt, who valued artistry and musical growth, that comment stung. She felt disrespected not just because she gave him a chance, but because he overlooked the influence she had on the band's early sound. What truly caused a rift, though, was what happened off stage. Ronstadt discovered Henley had been using her name to access venues and events she was not part of. He allegedly demanded guest access to a tour she headlined, without her permission. When she found out, she revoked all his backstage credentials. From that point on, Henley was no longer welcome at any of her shows. Industry insiders said Ronstadt handled the issue quietly but firmly. She didn't call out Henley in the press. She didn't create drama. She simply cut ties. For someone who had built her brand on grace and professionalism, it was a line she rarely crossed. This time, though, she made an exception. Here's the insight many people miss. Ronstadt was more than just a singer. She had influence behind the scenes, especially in shaping talent. Before the Eagles found their sound, they were molded by Ronstadt's touring style, stage discipline, and vocal layering techniques. Frey even said later that they learned the value of harmony from watching her record vocals. That's a major part of what made the Eagles sound so iconic. But Henley never acknowledged that influence publicly. Instead, he seemed to distance himself from the early days, possibly to build the Eagles' brand as independent and self-made. Ronstadt never demanded credit, but those who knew the full story saw the pattern. Ronstadt's producer at the time, John Boylan, was instrumental in introducing Frey and Henley to her. That connection wasn't random. It was intentional. Ronstadt wasn't just a bystander in the formation of the Eagles, she was part of the foundation. Yet, the way Henley separated himself from that origin story felt like a quiet betrayal. After the fallout, the two rarely crossed paths again. Ronstadt continued to evolve, experimenting with opera, mariachi, and big band. Henley stuck with the classic rock formula and pursued a solo career. Both were successful in their own right, but that early connection remained unspoken. Jim Morrison's backstage arrogance and public mockery of Linda Ronstadt left a lasting scar on their once promising relationship. Jim Morrison. Number 6. Jim Morrison's on-stage antics. It took Linda Ronstadt a while to find her way in the music business in 1968. The Stone Ponies, who had a hit with Different Drum, were the first band to bring her attention. During this rise, she met Jim Morrison, the lead singer of The Doors. The band was already known for their unpredictable shows and Morrison's wild behavior. The things that happened between them on stage, not what was planned, hurt their careers. Moving quickly, Morrison went to a concert where Ronstadt was the opening act. She was in the middle of her performance when he came out from behind the scenes, walked up to her, and pulled her toward him in front of everyone. He tried to kiss her right there on stage without telling her. It was awkward, not professional, and completely out of the blue. Ronstadt stopped and looked shocked. That moment made her look bad in front of thousands of people and spoiled the mood. It wasn't just a spur-of-the-moment choice. Morrison behaved in a way that matched a pattern. By 1968, his substance and alcohol use was getting worse, and he often caused problems at concerts. But this episode was different because it involved another artist who refused to be a part of his onstage drama. Morrison used Ronstadt as a prop in his show rather than as a friend. Ronstadt did not make a fuss in the backstage area after the show. People knew her for keeping her cool in public. But people who knew her well said that what happened really shook her. Even though she didn't say much about it, her team made it clear that she wouldn't be performing near Morrison again. She did not need that kind of chaos as her career grew. The performance was just one part of the problem. A few weeks later, Morrison made things worse. In a radio interview, he made fun of Ronstadt by calling her sweet but spineless. He said her music didn't have any fire and that she didn't stand up for herself. This was rude and touchy at the same time. At the time, it came from someone much more famous and powerful. The remark spread and Ronstadt's confidence dropped. But she still didn't answer in public. In no way did she act that way. Instead, she kept building her catalog and reputation one show at a time. But she had the Morrison moment, and some say it changed how she did business in the music business. From then on, Ronstadt became more aware of her stage presence and personal limits. She became more careful about choosing her partners and avoided tours with musicians who were known to act recklessly. This is the most important thing that most people don't know. Ronstadt was already getting respect in the business behind the scenes. Managers and producers saw her as more than just another young voice. They saw her as a professional with long-term prospects. After the Morrison event, some of those insiders paid her more attention. They liked how she dealt with it. No drama, just distance. It made her feel good about living in a selfish world. In the meantime, Morrison kept spinning. He began drinking too much and his stage stumbling got worse. After less than 3 years, he died at the age of 27. Even though he left a mark on rock history, things that happened with Ronstadt remind us that despite being brilliant, he was also very flawed. It wasn't just about his behavior, it was also about the career of another artist because he crossed lines that he shouldn't have. Ronstadt saw the event as the beginning of something new, not the end of the world. She kept going without ever focusing on drama. Not shockingly, she grew because she was talented and worked hard. Morrison quit quickly while Ronstadt went on to have a career that lasted decades. Number 5. Neil Young's dismissal. The middle of the 1970s were Linda Ronstadt's most famous years. Millions of copies Neil Young of her albums were sold, and no one else had a voice like hers. The only woman in charge of a rock scene mostly made up of men was she. Around the same time, Neil Young was also at his best. His political point of view and folk rock style were praised. Both artists were admired, even though they worked in very different types of music. So, when they met at a politically charged benefit concert in 1976, things didn't quite go as planned. A lot of musicians who came to the event were also activists fighting for the rights of farm workers. Linda Ronstadt joined the lineup with big names like Neil Young because she has always been for causes like these. It seemed like a strong mix of voices on paper. But behind the scenes, things quickly turned bad. Young had strong ideas about how protest music should sound: rough, urgent, and emotionally empty. Ronstadt didn't have the image he was going for because her performance was too polished and her sound was ready for the radio. Behind the scenes, he let go without holding on. He made it clear that he didn't like her style for the event, and he didn't listen to her suggestions during practice. People who were there said he told them her music was too commercial and too clean for a protest space. This was more than just a difference in taste. It felt one-on-one. Ronstadt was shocked because she was known for how hard she worked and how much she respected other artists. She wasn't there to be questioned in public. She was there to support a cause she cared about. She felt sad when she left the performance, but she was still professional. Neil Young and she had only been on stage together once before last night. At the time, the aftermath wasn't talked about in the news. The careers of both performers went on with their lives. Later, though, people in the business said Ronstadt quietly stopped working on projects with Young. She never talked about it in public, but in interviews years later, she hinted that male musicians had judged her sincerity wrongly at times. Young, on the other hand, kept writing political songs without any filters. He probably thought of it as something that would go away in the course of a long career full of strong opinions and creative conflict. He didn't speak in public very often. Later, though, even Ronstadt's fans agreed that the way she was treated that night seemed more about control than music. The background as well as the conflict were both unique. Ronstadt and Young were both fighting for the same cause, but they did it in different ways. You wanted speed and edge. She got there with clear reach. Ronstadt may have made protest music sound polished, but you could hear it a lot more on the radio and in record stores. She had the kind of platform that could move people without them having to yell. The most important thing that most people don't know is that Ronstadt didn't just walk away, she left. She became more selective about the political events she went to, making sure that not only the cause but also the energy fit with her values. She started funding activism behind the scenes so that she could use her success to inspire others without having to go on stage and risk being judged again. That choice set the tone for her second, less busy but still important career phase.